Adobe Acrobat Studio, your new foundation. Use PDF spaces to generate a presentation. Grab your docs, your permits, your moves. AI levels up your pitch, gets it in a groove. Choose a template with your timeless cool. Come on now, let's flex those tools. Draft, design, deliver, make it sing. AI builds the deck so you can build that thing. Do that, do that, do that with Acrobat.
Learn more at adobe.com/do-that-with-Acrobat.
I say this with all due respect to London City. Alexia Putellas can do a lot better than London City Lionesses. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Women's Soccer Show. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Allie.
And we have got so much to discuss this week. It's WSL, it's US Women's National Team. We've got potential transfer news. We're going to talk the new rules of the League Cup. And yes, we will also tell you what the League Cup is if you're from the United States and you don't know. We're going to talk about the FIFA Women's Champions Cup, what it is, why is it a thing, and so much more. There's a lot of meat here, Allie. I'm very excited. For U.S. Women's National Team fans, you're going to have to wait till the back half of the episode, but I promise it'll be worth it.
So, more of the rumor speculation. Could it possibly happen? Is this just fantasy team? Could Alexia Putellas be on her way out of Barcelona and into the heady heights of Bromley in Kent and over to the London City Lionesses? Putellas and a few of her Barcelona teammates were seen at the Manchester City-London City game this weekend, which has led to speculation that she will be leaving Barcelona and heading over to the WSL.
And I'm curious why after that why is Alexia going to London City and not is Alexia going to Manchester City?
Because I don't think Manchester City could afford her, is the honest answer, you know. It's like, there's not really a place for her in the team. I would say it's definitely, at this stage in her career, you know, get as much cash grab. Go to a Kang team, why not?
Alexia Putellas is only 31 years old. You're making it seem like she's like 37 at this point in her career.
I mean the fact that she's won everything she can possibly win in Spain.
Well, so this is what we were talking about, because this, first of all, this would be wild, and we will say once again, this is just a rumor, started simply because they were at the game, but Alexia Putellas bleeds Barcelona. She is Barcelona through and through, from her family, from her parents. I can't see it. Like I said to you, Barcelona is the only team that plays that style of football. And if you want to play that style of football, you stay in Barcelona. So I understand what you're saying about the competition of it all. She's won everything she can with Barcelona. But there are other reasons other than that to stay.
I mean, we saw Ash Neville leave Tottenham, which nobody saw coming. So anything can happen in women's football.
And I'll just repeat, what did I ask you right before we hit record? Is there a 50% or greater chance that you think Alexia Putellas leaves Barcelona and goes to the WSL?
I would say, yeah. I'd say there's a good over a 50% chance.
All right, let's move it along, because the League Cup has announced that it will change its format starting in the 2026-2027 season. So let's start there, Allie. First and foremost, the League Cup has had many a name. Right now, the Subway Cup is what it is called, but please remind people what it is, how the format used to be, and what the changes will be in the future.
So many of us still belovedly call it the Conti Cup, but it is just another trophy as part of the domestic treble you can win in England. It is specifically for Championship and WSL teams, and the way it used to be is that all teams in the Championship and WSL, apart from the 3 that were taking part in the Champions League, all went into groups. They then played each other in their groups, and then the top one of because it's normally 5 groups, the top one of that group qualifies for the next round, and that's when the 3 teams that are part of the Champions League come in, and then it goes into a standard tournament format of quarters, semis, and finals. We've just had our semi-finals, and we've now got our finalists. It will be Manchester United versus Chelsea, and that will take place on the 15th of March in Bristol.
That'll be a fun one.
Always a fun one.
The biggest change to this 26-27 new format is that WSL clubs who qualify for the Champions League will no longer compete in the League Cup.
At all. Done. Not a chance. Not even in later stages. You are out. So there's now, it's not impossible to win the domestic treble in England, but it's now a lot harder to win the domestic treble. They're also scrapping the group element of it. So it's going to a very similar format, what they're calling the Swiss style. It's very similar to what they've done for the Champions League this year, which is that it will be in a table format and you will be randomly drawn against there'll be 6 teams will be drawn randomly against each other and they will play each other. So therefore it will not be, because also you have to remember the groups used to be geographically set. So southern teams would play southern teams, northern teams would play northern teams. Now it's anybody can play anybody in this league format. The top 8 will then progress, and again it will then go into quarters, semis, and finals.
All right, 2 questions. Actually, I think just one, and that is, how are people reacting to this in England?
So if you are a fan of the top 3, they hate it because you can no longer win that domestic treble. And obviously to win the Champions League is more prestigious, it's more important as, a defining characteristic. But you know what? We've talked about this before about you want to win hardware over like placing in the Champions League. You are now being denied that opportunity to win hardware. There's also an argument that they're saying, well, it's just going to be a clear run for the team that finished 4th the year before.
I don't think that that's the case, for the record. It gets muddy in the middle of the table of the WSL. It feels more actually up for grabs for anybody than it ever has before.
Well, this is my argument. So as a fan of a traditional
This is what I was going to ask you.
Team,
you are not a fan of a team that has been in the top 3. How do you feel about this? Because you also love to see maybe the potential for a domestic treble. So I feel like from here, it seems like you might be split.
I'm a little conflicted, but for the most part, I'm in favour of these changes because I hate the fact that the Champions League teams play less games to get to the same point. So if you look at our 2 finalists for this year, they've only played 2 matches compared to West Ham played 4 matches to get to the quarters and then lost to a club that, granted, Manchester City did play in the group stages this time round. So that's fair enough. But it's literally these 2 have got to the final after playing way less matches than their opponents. And I don't think that's fair. So for me, I like the idea of the fact that, and like you said, we're seeing the gap between Championship and the WSL getting much smaller. It's getting much tighter. So it means that maybe these Championship teams can go a little bit further.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, so the League Cup has come out and said that this format change also is meant to ease the increasingly congested calendar of Champions League playing clubs. So it's kind of twofold, where the first format was supposed to ease it by basically eliminating all games but the potential semifinal and final. And now they're just saying, you know what, that didn't seem fair. You're just not in the League Cup period, the end, because you have those other games. And that, I appreciate them just being aware of the calendar in and of itself. Understand that it's kind of tough now because if you make Champions League, you can't get the domestic treble. But hey, you're in Champions League. Go forth. Have fun. Whatever. All right, let's move it along. There's something called the FIFA Women's Champions Cup that is being hosted in London basically right now. And we've alluded to this on the podcast previously. We haven't really talked about it, mainly because I think we both think it's pretty dumb. I believe my direct quote was that it's pointless and stupid. Allie's direct quote was that it is the biggest waste of time ever.
And it's already controversial because as a European side, because Arsenal are in this, have said, well, we never agreed to the timing of this. So they hate the fact that this is congesting the mid of our season.
Yeah.
You've got Gotham going, well, we've not even started our season, so we're out of practice. We've not really been able to train together to full strength. So it's like, who is this for? Who wants this?
Well, FIFA, because this relates to the Club World Cup that they're trying to host for the first time, I believe in 2028, if I can remember correctly. They want it to be in Qatar in 2028. We spoke about that a couple weeks ago. This is kind of like a Club World Cup light, very, very light, extremely light. This is almost testing the waters of a Club World Cup. The format in and of itself is a little ridiculous just to begin with. Gotham, Corinthians, Arsenal, and OSFAR are the 4 teams that will be playing in this Women's Champions Cup. Now, Gotham, Corinthians, and Arsenal have entered this cup at this exact stage right now. There are 4 teams. It's the semifinals, and they will be playing their first games of this, quote, tournament now. OSFAR have entered in the second round. They won, and now they are entering the semifinals. And so there will be 2 semifinal games, and then there will be a consolation game and a championship game. The 2 semifinal games will be Gotham versus Corinthians, which, for those who don't know, is a Brazilian club. And then the second one will be Arsenal and OSFAR, which is a Moroccan side. They are the African champions. So those 2 games will be on Wednesday, January 28th, when this podcast is dropping. The consolation and championship games will be back-to-back on Sunday, February 1st.
This is so dumb.
Yeah.
It's so dumb, because also this then feeds into disrupting the WSL, because Arsenal are supposed to have a league game on the 1st. A very important league game. And that's now not going to happen.
So if you would like to watch, those are happening. And that is all. All right, let's get down to business. And let's talk WSL. Allie, you mentioned Arsenal were supposed to have a big game coming up on the 1st. Well, we're going to talk about it all, because Arsenal are also coming off of a huge game and a huge result, winning 2-0 against Chelsea. Maybe the biggest result of the weekend. We're going to spend a lot of this time in doing what we're going to call table talk. We're going to talk about the table, because that was the biggest result of the weekend. Because now, how do the standings look? Manchester City are sitting with 36 points. Chelsea are sitting at 27 points. They are 9 points behind Manchester City. They needed to keep pace with City to give themselves a chance, and they didn't. They fell back 3 more points. They're now 9 points out. I mean, it's got to be over.
Because even if Manchester City lose to Chelsea, Arsenal, and Manchester United, who they have to still play, their goal difference is still so significant that it would take a lot right now for Manchester City to lose this title.
I believe it was a few weeks ago we had this debate, and I said the title race is over, and you said it's not, because City could still drop points to others.
Yes, when it was like 6 points, when it was like 2 games. Now it's 9 points. It feels a much bigger task, because Chelsea have got to beat Manchester City and then find 2 games where Manchester City would lose. And you could argue that they might lose the derby. You could argue that they might lose to Arsenal. But the way they're playing right now, I don't see that happening.
Chelsea have won 8, drawn 3, lost 2. And you mentioned that no team who has dropped this many points has ever gone on to win the WSL. That's a huge statistic, Allie.
Nope. We normally say that you can lose 2 and still go on and win the title. It's harder, but it's doable. No one has ever lost 3 and then gone on to win the WSL. Just doesn't happen.
All right, so I have 2 questions here. The first one pertains to City, and then the second one, we're going to stop talking about City for a second. We're going to look below them. But first and foremost, are Manchester City that good? Or have Chelsea, Arsenal, United been that poor?
Do you know what? For the first time, I'll give the props to Manchester City, because I think they have been that good.
I agree.
I genuinely think they have been that good.
Especially now that Sam Coffey's there.
Sam Coffey came on for about 10 minutes in the London City game. Calm yourself.
I just said that to rile you up.
Calm your American ass down. No, so I think it shows what happens when you have a decent manager at the helm.
Imagine what they could have done if they didn't have Gareth Taylor all those years.
Correct.
It's been a while since we've had Gareth Taylor slander on this podcast. I'm just trying to bring it back around.
I mean, we can talk about him when we talk about Liverpool. But you've seen that they've really strengthened where they need to strengthen. They have brought in the talent that they need. They've got a decent coach at the moment. their bench is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And they had a bit of a wobble at the very beginning of the season. First game of the season, you can never guess what a team's going to do. Yes, they lost to Chelsea. And then you now look at where they are now. They seem to be able to grind out results because they went 1-up against London City. They then conceded and still managed to grind out the result to make it 2-1 to get that 9-point cushion which you need.
Teams continue to prove to me that, especially in the WSL, benches win championships. And I feel like for a while now, the team with the best bench, not just the best 11, not just the best 12, but the best full bench has won the WSL. And I think that's City this year. But now let's look below City, because sitting in second, third, fourth, and fifth place respectively, it goes Chelsea, Arsenal, United, Tottenham. And only 4 points separate them from top to bottom. Chelsea with 27 in the second spot, Tottenham with 23 points in the fifth spot, and then Arsenal and United in between. Tottenham are in this. They continue. This is the point in the season where they start to fall off, and they haven't done so yet.
Well, you can't base it on one game. However, losing to bottom of the table Liverpool, conceding 2 goals in the last 5 minutes is a very Tottenham thing to do.
Yeah, certainly. But again, we can't base it off of one game, so we'll continue to include them in this conversation. We're now talking about 4 teams vying for 2 more Champions League spots.
I mean, to be honest, I think the real battle is going to be for third. I do think Chelsea have got that second spot.
Chelsea are 1 point ahead of Arsenal right now, and Arsenal just took points off of them in a head-to-head. Their goal difference is Chelsea are ahead of Arsenal in their goal differential by one point. It is certainly not over and done for Chelsea in that second spot.
No, but if you watch the game, Arsenal did what Arsenal do, which is they were not great for most of the game, came up clutch for 10 minutes, and then held on.
So you just think Chelsea will have a better rest of the season, a better end of the season?
Exactly. I do. I genuinely do. So I do think it's going to be between Arsenal, Manchester United and Tottenham for that third spot. Now, who that's going to go to, I genuinely couldn't predict because it is so game to game at the moment.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, Arsenal didn't really play that well, but they came up clutch and got the points they needed against Chelsea. You then look at Manchester United, who absolutely thrashed Aston Villa this weekend. It was, again, had a dire first half, came up, absolutely signed brilliantly in this January transfer window.
Shout out to Jenna Nicewanger, who got her first minutes, by the way, for Aston Villa.
She's free! But yeah, so seeing that with Manchester United, and also Tottenham are still up there. You know, I joke about them losing to Liverpool, but they are still up there, and they've got some very winnable games coming up. So I do think the real battle is going to be for third. I'm going to be honest, I am going to count Tottenham out a little bit. I do think it's going to be between Manchester United and Arsenal, but surprise me, Spurs. Genuinely, come on, surprise me.
Listen, I'm not rooting for Tottenham to get that third spot over Arsenal by any means. I certainly don't think that they're out of this, especially with how inconsistent Arsenal have been. United, despite how well I think that they've played on the field, their results haven't really shown all that much. How well they can play, I think it's all up for grabs. But I do think an interesting point is that we might know a lot more after the next couple of weeks, because Chelsea face Manchester City this coming weekend. Arsenal then face Manchester City the following weekend. I think how both of those teams do against City could be a difference maker. If they both lose to City, it won't really make a difference. But if one wins and one loses, that's a big 3 points right there that the other didn't get, or even a 1 point, for example, with a draw. All right. Before we move on, we have to talk about the bottom of the table as well, because we got to give some love to West Ham.
Yay!
All right. Allie, it was a big weekend for the bottom of the table. Liverpool and West Ham both sit at the bottom, and both took 3 points.
Yay! It was amazing. My mother and father came to the game with me this time, and it's the first time my mother has seen West Ham win since we beat Manchester City many, many moons ago, because she gave up.
I'm happy. I don't know if I'm happy for you or sad for you. I thought
No, it's a good thing. We're going to take it as a good thing. But what it does mean now is because of other results. Obviously, West Ham beat Leicester, who are currently above them with one singular point now. And because Brighton, shout out Brighton for doing us a favour, beat Everton on Friday, it now means Everton are equal on points with West Ham, but they do have a superior goal difference. Now, those two clubs face off each other on the 8th of February. So that's going to be a huge matchup because I think that's going to be the most vital of 3 points. But it does now drag Leicester and Everton into the relegation battle, and it's not just now between West Ham and Liverpool, because Liverpool have still got to play Leicester and Everton again. West Ham have got to play Everton again. It's now could be any of those four instead of just any of those two.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, aside obviously from us thinking that City had the title wrapped up with this past weekend, this is the other highlight from this past weekend, is that it's no longer a two-team relegation battle. Both West Ham and Liverpool winning has absolutely dragged Everton and Leicester City into this relegation race, and it could be anybody. And we will remind everybody once again, it could be nobody, because the WSL is expanding from 12 teams to 14 teams next year. And let's see if I can do this just off of the top of my head. Now, what will happen is the top team from the championship will be promoted. No, the top two teams will be promoted, and the bottom WSL team will play the third place championship team in a playoff match, and the winner of that will enter or stay in the WSL. So we could have everybody in the WSL staying and 2 promoted. We could have 1 leaving and 3 promoted. Before we move on, the final topic I think that we need to discuss in the WSL does pertain to the bottom of the table, and that is Everton, because it seems that fans are starting to call for Everton head coach Sorensen's job.
Yeah, so after they lost to Brighton this weekend, you could hear it on like the broadcast, and like people were reporting that they were chanting Brian out. So Sorensen has just signed a 4-year extension on his managerial deal at the start of this season. He did some great work with Everton. He got them one of their highest finishes.
He's been great. We've had him on the pod. We love him on a personal note, obviously. And that's, but yeah, but also understand, yes, also understand the frustrations, of course. Sometimes coaches for clubs are great for a certain period, and then they've taken them as far as they can take them. And it seems that Everton fans are kind of saying, hey, this is as far as you can take us, really.
Yeah, it doesn't help that their home form has been abysmal. Now, it could be that they're getting used to playing at Goodison because they used to play at Walton Hall, which is a very different stadium compared to what Goodison Park is. But their home form has been a thing, and he's lost the last, I think, 8 home games. Like he's lost a lot big run. So, and we're now starting to see, which we never used to in the WSL, that clubs aren't scared to get rid of managers anymore. It used to be, well, we'll put up with them for a season and we'll see if they can turn it around, or, you know, we've given them this contract, so we'll have to deal with it. But it's now seen, we've already seen West Ham have replaced their coach. We've seen London City have replaced their coach already.
I think it's a growing trend in all of sports, in men's sports, in women's sports. I think it's a growing trend in all of sports where organizations and clubs are very quick to move on from head coaches. Whether that's for better or for worse, I guess, is to be determined. I don't personally love it at all, but here we are. Let's go around the world. Around the world, around the world.
To Spain, and it was the Supercopa final this weekend, and Barcelona took on old foe Real Madrid. It was the Catalonian side who were victorious, winning 2-0 and retaining the title. Elsewhere in the league, a win for Sociedad has cemented their place in third.
And to Mexico in La Liga MX, we have a 3-way tie at the top of the table with Club America, Pumas, and Guadalajara all on 13 points. Monterrey are close behind in fourth, and rounding out the top 5 is Tigres on 10 points.
to Scotland, and Glasgow City are currently sitting 5 points clear at the top of the table, despite their draw with third place Rangers this weekend. Second place Celtic won 1-0 at Montrose, and last year's winners Hibs won convincingly 5-0 against Hamilton.
And finally, to Germany, the Bundesliga is back, and what a start. Bayern remain undefeated after their win against Leipzig. Third place Bremen could only manage a draw this weekend, whereas fifth place Leverkusen managed to get a late winner despite playing most of the match down to 10 players.
Over to the other side of the pond, and we are going to talk international and the US women's national team. So they played their first friendly of the calendar year with a 6-0 win over Paraguay that happened this past Saturday on the 24th, and they will be playing Chile on Tuesday the 27th. However, the big talking point, the big stories came from the Emma Hayes presser that happened pre the Paraguay game. Lots to discuss, lots to talk about.
Yeah, and I feel like this was more interesting than talking about both games. Obviously, both games will happen by the time this podcast drops, but we won't have gotten to see all of Tuesdays. And especially when we saw who was called into the camp, let's just say first and foremost, like Emma Hayes was very upfront on the press conference about, this is not the core group. We don't have the core group around. This camp was calling in a bunch of youngsters, a bunch of people with not a lot of caps, and seeing who could maybe be a player that could potentially work their way into the core group. She's not plucking a player from this and being like, they're part of the core group. This is more of like, is there anybody that stands out that I could bring into camp to see if they could compete with this core group? So that's really what this was about. It's not worth us going into gameplay and talking about, the U.S. played a 3-4-3. What does that mean? They're playing with three back. We don't know what it means because this is not the entire roster that Emma Hayes would naturally select. So I do think a lot of interesting things like what I just said right there came out of the Emma Hayes press conference, which we will, I guess, talk about now. And maybe we'll start off with the fact that it was hilarious that she accidentally broke the news a day before it was supposed to be announced that the U.S. has now 3 games scheduled against Japan. She accidentally broke that news during the press conference a day early, which was pretty funny.
Yeah, let's quickly talk about the games you guys have got scheduled because you have got some big ones. So first of all, you've got the wonderfully named as ever She Believes. That will be happening against Argentina, Canada, and Colombia. I think that's a great mix because, the amount of times the US have played Canada, it's getting now to that point where it's a proper landmark fixture because you do not know what's going to happen.
No, and historically those two teams don't like each other. I think people forget now because
you do not. It's nasty. It's tasty.
Yeah, I think people forget because a lot of them play together in the NWSL, but as international teams, historically, they don't like each other. And this will be even more interesting now with Casey Stoney as the head coach of Canada, having had a little bit more time under her belt. She's probably not a super big fan of the U.S. for many reasons right now. And I don't know. It'll be a fun one. And then Colombia, of course. Oh, I mean, I'll watch Colombia play anybody. That'll be a blast. And then, Argentina is kind of like the sore thumb that sticks out. But when we talked about the World Cup, we talked about different styles of play and how certain teams haven't come up against different styles of play. And Argentina has a different style of play than Canada, than Colombia, than the U.S. So that'll be a fun one to watch no matter what.
Yeah, no, I think this is perfect because you are going to come up against 3 very different styles of football. Yes, both Argentina and Colombia are South American, but they play different styles of football. It's not a generic South American style. And this is what you guys need to do because you haven't got a major tournament for a while.
Question, before you move on to the rest of the games. Should She Believes drop their name and become Arnold Clark now that there's no Arnold Clark Cup?
Yes, you should.
Should we start that
you should
petition?
change it anyway because it's dumb. It's the one thing I agree with Hope Solo on in the fact that this is stupid. But, yeah, petition that the Arnold Clark Cup come back because he is obviously the founder of women's football.
We're going to start that here.
So you've then got in March in the international break, Belgium versus Portugal. We talk about different styles of football. Again, both European clubs both play very different styles of football. Belgium is very methodical. They are very tactical, whereas Portugal is more likely to give you something more physical. So again, a great challenge for the US.
Absolutely.
You excited?
I am excited. Yeah. And then I was excited for the 3 Japan games. And then after that, May and June, it's Senegal, Germany, and Paraguay. I'm most excited for Germany, obviously. Emma Hayes also hinted that there's more tough opponents in the latter half of the year that have not been announced. And she's been very clear, and I wholeheartedly believe her when she says this, that she wants to build this team up against the toughest of competition. So I wholeheartedly believe that we will start to see more and more big names on the U.S. Women's National Team friendlies calendar. Obviously, it is now the year 2026. The World Cup is in 2027, so there's qualification that also needs to happen. So it is a big, big year for the U.S., for U.S. Women's National Team, for Emma Hayes. And I think that's partly why this presser was so interesting, because this is the start of year 2 for her. And until now, she's kind of gotten to, she's not faffing about.
British of you, she's not faffing.
Thank you. She has gone to take her time, look at a lot of players, and now decisions are going to need to be made more quickly than they were before. So here we go.
So let's talk about the highlights of this presser, because obviously the big highlight was her accidentally telling the world that you guys are going to be playing Japan a full day before she was meant to. Also, fun fact that she'd gone to Disneyland the day before. That was all.
I know. I found that interesting. I'm not a Disney adult, but I don't judge people who are. I'll just say that.
It is what it is. I think for me, the biggest fun fact was talking about how she had spoken about different players having to step up in leadership roles. She announced that she'd already told Trinity Rodman that she was going to be captain of that first game as long as she was fit and she'd come through training able to play. She'd also talked about other players that she was saying, you guys are going to step it up because we're going to be using you possibly as captain.
We should talk about who those players were that she named in that capacity too, which was Claire Hutton and Emily Sams, who are 2 very young players. Claire Hutton got her first U.S. Women's National Team cap in the year of 2025.
There you go.
And that'll just tell you how young this entire roster was. But I think the more important part of that is it tells you how Emma Hayes looks at those 2 players. Because you can look at Claire Hutton and say, look at how few caps she's gotten. This could be a player that Emma Hayes kind of has waiting in the wings, who won't get a lot of time, who she has her eye on for whatever is past 2027. You can say the same for Emily Sams. But the fact that Emma Hayes named those 2 players in that capacity when she was talking about Trinity Rodman being captain and asking those 2 players to also step up in a leadership role, that tells you how she views them. And it's no surprise whatsoever. Anybody that's watched the NWSL knows how good Emily Sams can be, knows what a leader she can be in the back line. Anybody that has watched Claire Hutton, not just in the NWSL, but in, for example, her first ever U.S. Women's National Team game last year, I believe it was at PayPal Park in San Jose. Unbelievable. I equate it to the first time I watched Sam Coffey's first cap in the U.S. Women's National Team, where you're like, this person's a star. This was a future star of the U.S. Women's National Team. And I think Emma Hayes thinks that about Claire Hutton as well. But let's get back to the Rodman of it all, because I think there's a lot there too, Allie.
No, absolutely. As it said in the press, in the fact that she has only had a single cap in like the last calendar year due to injury and being out, but she is also ironically one of the most senior players on this squad, and there is a huge weight on her shoulders. We've seen it obviously because of what's happened with her contract negotiations. Spoiler alert, that's now done. For anybody that's not seen, she is staying at the Spirit, has been given a nice chunk of change, and all is right with the world for the time being. But, you know, again, it shows what an important piece she is to your national team.
I think maybe 3 questions. This was not a long press conference, maybe 20 minutes. I think 3 of the questions were about Trinity Rodman. And to your point, Allie, there's big news. If you're listening to this podcast, I'm sure you saw it because it was announced quite a few days ago. Trinity Rodman, now the highest paid player, $2 million contract. She's staying in the NWSL. Emma Hayes was asked about her quite a bit. And a lot of what Emma Hayes said was that She's happy it's done. A happy Trinity is good for everybody. She's happy she's staying in the NWSL. And I think the two bigger points were, number one, Emma Hayes said that she speaks to Trinity a lot about what it means to be a role model here in the United States for young kids and players here in the United States. And it seems to be very important to Trinity and for her to stay in the NWSL. We have to talk about, I think, the piece of this that we missed. And that is when we're talking about Rodman on the U.S. Women's National Team and we're talking about her in these contract negotiations, this has taken over everything. This is somebody who is basically at the center of an argument. The NWSL and the NWSLPA were literally fighting about this one player, and it's taken over basically all of sports talk in terms of women's soccer. If you're interested in women's soccer, that's the main topic. We've missed the part of this where there is such a weight of the world on this very young person's shoulders. The most important quote that Emma Hayes said is that she hopes that when Trinity comes into camp, she can just have fun and play soccer and focus on being Trinity Rodman. And if that doesn't tell you what kind of a weight is on Trinity's shoulders right now, I don't know what does. I feel so terrible for her that this had to happen, that half of the press conference for a U.S. Women's National Team is talking about Trinity Rodman's NWSL contract negotiation and how she's doing right now. It's wild to me. It's just wild. And I'm happy it's over and done with.
Should we talk about other players that got highly mentioned by Emma Hayes? So the big thing is defenders, because 8 defenders got called into camp this January. There were 4 centre-backs that she's been talking about. I know you have some thoughts, feelings, and opinions.
Yeah. I love whoever asked her about centre-backs, also asked her about goalkeepers, which we will get onto, because I feel like there's so many hot topics, but goalkeepers and center backs are kind of two of the main ones for what this U.S. Women's National Team will look like in 2027. And Emma Hayes basically said, look, there's 4 center backs that are here in this camp right now, alongside Tierna Davidson, and those 5 will be competing to push themselves into the core group of center backs alongside Naomi Girma and Emily Sonnet. So Emma Hayes gave us a really clear picture of what the center back pool looks like. Girma and Sonnet seem to be a lock. And then the 4 center backs that are in camp that she's speaking about alongside Tierna Davidson, who is not in camp but is now back from injury, which we're really excited about. So she'll be in this pool that she's talking about. But the 4 are Jordan Bugg, Tara Rudd, who is formerly Tara McKeown, now Tara Rudd, Emily Sams, and Kennedy Wesley. Seems to be what the pool is looking like.
And again, very youthful.
Yeah. And for those watching, Jordan Bugg didn't get any time in the first game. She had a cold, so she's expected to be starting on Tuesday. So we will see. And this is the moment for everybody to play themselves in.
Speaking of playing yourselves in, because the question is still up in the air. She kept saying, after this camp we'll know, after this camp we'll know. And now she's just like, I don't know, but we will see. The goalkeeper situation of it all. Who is Naya's successor? Do we have any further insight?
It's funny. I think when Emma Hayes got hired, she said by July of 2025, she'll have like a clear picture of 3 keepers. That didn't happen, as you just mentioned. Nobody knows still really who is going to be the number 1. It does seem like she has narrowed the pool down, but the biggest learning that we have out of this camp is that Emma Hayes is speaking so highly of Mandy McGlynn and has said that McGlynn has had the best camp of all the goalkeepers, got the start in the first game in the 6-0 win against Paraguay on Saturday the 24th. And I think everybody was a little surprised by that. I think everybody was looking at the goalkeepers and thinking, oh, it's probably going to be Fallon. Look at her experience. Look at the international experience. Look at how old she is. Look at all of this. And Mandy McGlynn seems to have come out of nowhere. Listen, we don't know. There's a lot of international windows that I think in the next 3, we're going to have a really clear picture. Because, of course, you mentioned there's She Believes. Then there's another one in late March. Then there's the 3 games against Japan in April. And my guess is that by the end of that, we're going to have a real clear picture about who is coming out on top in that goalkeeper pool. Let me ask you, Allie, as a final question.
Go for it.
Because I personally love how Emma Hayes has done this, and I think she's been really transparent. She keeps certain things to herself and with the players, but she's been really transparent about how she's building this. And I think she's done a fantastic job of it. From the outside, How does it appear to you in terms of how Emma Hayes has been slowly and methodically putting this U.S. women's national team kind of back together?
Yeah, it does feel like she has been very methodical. She's had to deal with unexpected retirements, maybe, injuries and things like that. So she has had to piece it together. I think it's great that she is going for the youth, because it did feel like, I have to say, and that's just because she had to, the beginning of her tenure was just a copy and paste of Vlatko, and it was just using the same players he did. It's nice to see that she's actually now taken a step back and actually looked at the, American players as a whole and gone, all right, this is what we need. These are the gaps we need. I love the fact that she doesn't call the European players up in the middle of their season, because that we've seen that led to injuries and disruption and all sorts. She seems to have a much better player management well-being handle than previous coaches have had, which I really think is going to help build the USA back to its former glory.
Couldn't agree more. Kristen Press was honored on Saturday before the first game against Paraguay, and was just honored for her time with the U.S. women's national team. That was really fun and also sad to watch after she broke the internet with her 2016 post. Still don't understand why people are obsessed with that, but we'll move along from there. Emma Hayes was asked about Kristen Press in this pregame press conference, and was very cute and was like, I'm the biggest U.S. women's national team fan. So was talking all about the history of the U.S. women's national team, and also said, and maybe this is me reading in between the lines, but did kind of make a comment about how Kristen Press, in a way, it's not like she pioneered going overseas, but she went overseas as a U.S. women's national team player at a time where it was a lot harder to go play club soccer overseas, and kind of hinted at the fact that now the infrastructure is more set up for U.S. women's national team players to play outside of the NWSL. We all know the infamous Jill Ellis had a rule that you're not going to play on the U.S. women's national team unless you play domestic soccer, because she thought that was the best way to grow the game in the United States. It felt like Emma was kind of hinting around that while she was talking about Kristen Press going over despite all of that, which I just think was very interesting. So Kristen Press, we miss you. We love you. And I'm happy she got honored for her time with the U.S. women's national team.
And that is it from us here at the Women's Soccer Show. Make sure you check out our Patreon, where we put up all of our extra content. But until then, I've been Ali.
I've been Sarah. Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
This podcast was edited by Monkey Hill Media. Visit monkeyhillmedia.com for more information.